Hi, my name is Chris Mascioli, and today I'll be presenting PatientAgent, which is our submission for the SCML OneShot agent. This agent was done in coordination with Professor Amy Greenwald at Brown. So I'm going to plan to go over the general rules of the OneShot game, go over some of the other agents that we tested PatientAgent against, then go over the design and results from PatientAgent and OneShot. So some general information about the game is the game consists of 2 layers of agents. The first layer is given a set of exogenous buy contracts, and their goal is to sell their items for the highest price possible. The second layer is given a set of exogenous sell contracts, and their goal is to buy the items from the first layer at the lowest price possible. Each layer in a particular agent has a negotiation thread with every other agent in another layer. So if there's 3 agents in the first layer and 4 agents in the second one, there's going to be 12 concurrent negotiation threads. Each negotiation has 2 issues that's trying to determine: quantity, which is between 0 and 10, and price, which is based on the trading price and the price multiplier of a particular day. The agents pay penalties when they're not able to either sell enough or obtain enough to fulfill their exogenous contracts. And the goal of the game is to accrue the greatest profit at the end. At the beginning of each day, 1 layer is selected at random, but not uniform, to be the first to make a proposal. And then the layer that doesn't make the proposal is going to be the last to give a response. So you can see in this little table, if layer 0 proposes at time 0, then layer 1 is going to respond at time 19, and that's going to be the end of the negotiation. The world's constructed by taking a number of player agents and some environment agents. So what happens is you take one of each player agent that's being submitted for the particular world, and then you fill the rest of the world in with environmental agents. And there's 3 environmental agents provided by the competition. The first one's single agreement aspiration agent, which, like the name implies, is going to only do 1 contract in any given contract day. So if during time step 3, they make a contract, they're going to end negotiations with everyone else after that, because they only are looking for 1 agreement. There's also greedy one-shot agent and greedy sync agent. These are both greedy aspirational agents that will accept if an offer is over a certain threshold. Otherwise, they're going to continue negotiating. The big difference between them is that one is a sync agent, which means it's going to wait until it receives all offers before making any decisions about them. Due to how negotiations are configured, it's actually better to be on the top of a layer than the bottom, because you get the offers first. But this wasn't used in PatientAgent or anywhere in the agent design. Next, we're going to go over the other agents that we tried the PatientAgent against and just discuss the motivations for it. So AdaptiveAgent and LearningAgent are the 2 agents given inside the SCML OneShot tutorial. But it turns out that all the best performing agents from last year were built off them. So both the number 1 and number 2, which were Gentle Agent and Agent 1, were built off LearningAgent and AdaptiveAgent. And they have a pretty simple strategy. So for their acceptance strategy, the first thing they check is if the quantity offered is greater than the quantity they need. And if it is, they're just going to reject the offer. Otherwise, they just check if the price that's being offered by the opponent is better for them than the price that they're going to offer next. And if it is, then they logically just decide to agree. They also share an offer strategy, and their offer strategy is to always offer the quantity that they still need. So if their exogenous contract was 9 and they came to an agreement for 3, they're going to always ask for 6 then for everyone. And the price of their offer is just going to be this function of time where they're going to start by offering the best price for themselves, and then they're going to continue to lower that or raise that price depending on which layer they are, depending on what time step in the negotiation it is. The big difference in the agents is how they set the worst price they're willing to accept. So they start out accepting the worst price that's allowed. So say the negotiations are allowed to go between 10 and 20. They're gonna start with their price worst at 10 and their price best at 20. Then if an agent gives AdaptiveAgent an agreement with a price of 16, let's say, AdaptiveAgent is going to change P worst to now be 16. So the worst they'll accept from any other negotiation is 16. And LearningAgent just adds one more layer to this, and LearningAgent substitutes P worst with either the worst price that's allowed for the world or the worst price that a particular negotiating partner has given during the course of any negotiation. So if they accepted a price of 18 on day 2, the worst they'll accept on day 7 is also 18. So you can, if you give a LearningAgent a bad price early on, you can kind of say goodbye to any profitable negotiations with that agent for the rest of the game. The performance between the two is not significantly different. LearningAgent has a slight edge when they're run head-to-head, but when you put other agents into the environment with them, it's kind of basically random who wins. The agents perform really well, as you can tell by the agents both being the top performers last year. And it's hard to find a strategy that counters what they do, because they're really good at exploiting the stupid agents in your layer. So one agent in your layer giving a bad price kind of locks the rest of the negotiation with that particular agent to be a bad price. And there's really nothing you can do to overcome that. So as a hypothetical agent, you could have an agent that at the first step just gives the worst price for themselves and the best price to their opponents to everyone. And what that's going to do is basically shut down negotiation if all those agents on the other side are learning or adaptive agents. This agent performs really poorly in testing, but just having the threat of this kind of agent shuts down a number of things you could do to kind of try to exploit adaptive and learning agents. With that, we'll go on to the agent we submitted, which was PatientAgent. So I'll just start with the motivating observations for what determined PatientAgent strategy. And the first thing is that trading is significantly better than not trading. The utility of disagreement is a lot worse than the utility of getting the right quantity at the worst price, which is only slightly worse than getting the right quantity at the best price. So you really want to focus on that quantity, because the penalties for either falling short or having to dispose some of your exogenous contracts is really high. AdaptiveAgent and LearningAgent both don't make trades until really late into the negotiation. On average, if you have AdaptiveAgent, LearningAgent, and a few other of their descendants from OneShot competition last year, you don't really see a trade go through until around like time step 15 or 16. And if you drop the 3 environmental agents, they actually won't trade with each other until time step 20. So PatientAgent, where it gets its name from, is that it patiently waits for these early rounds of the negotiation to be over and just ignores them because there's no real utility to be gained by participating truthfully during them. The strategy as a buyer or a seller doesn't really matter. Both buyer and seller are trying to get their respective best price, and there's nothing particularly unique to either side. The disagreement utility is around the same on average for buyers and sellers due to how the parameters are set. So one side isn't more encouraged to trade than the other. However, the first to offer versus the last to offer change is significant, and that will be a large part in how PatientAgent strategy works out. One last thing, starting balances are really high, so there's no real threat of bankruptcy. So PatientAgent never looks at its balance when it's making any decisions, or makes a decision based on its own balance. So the simpler end of PatientAgent is when it's first to propose, and that means it's also going to make the last proposal. And when it does this, it actually just inherits from AdaptiveAgent and plays exactly the same. I tried doing what the agents did last year, where they tried different parameters or different ways of accepting offers with PatientAgent, with AdaptiveAgent, but none of those turned out to be any like statistically significant improvements. I chose to inherit from AdaptiveAgent instead of LearningAgent because I didn't want the negotiations that happen when it's doing its second to propose strategy to affect the lock-in rate for LearningAgent with our opponents for when LearningAgent would operate. So I just wanted something that reset each day. So the big difference from PatientAgent and the other learning and adaptive agent is what happens when it's second to propose. And this means that it will be last to accept an offer. So the first thing is the acceptance strategy. Before the last time step, patient agent, just like its name implies, is always going to reject offers unless the price that the opponent is offering is the best price for us. So if we're buying, it means that they give us the lowest price allowed, which really never happens until the last step. So basically, patient agent doesn't really do anything until the last step of the negotiation. And then at the final step of the negotiation, patient agent just uses a patient look-ahead strategy. And that means that it's just going to wait for all offers, and it's going to pick the bundle of offers that provide it the best utility. If there's a tie, it tries to pick the bundle that has the opponents doing the worst. So with the lowest balances at the time of the offer, and that's just to prevent agents on the other side doing significantly better. So it just checks the balance to make sure that we're not rewarding a particularly successful agent when there's a tie. The offer strategy, once again, is really simple. All it's going to do is it's going to make an offer of the quantity it currently needs and the best price for itself. There's some risk when it makes these offers of its current quantity to multiple opponents, because theoretically multiple opponents could accept them during the same round, and then we have to pay a significant penalty for either overselling or overbuying. But that doesn't really happen in practice. No one ever really accepts these offers, except some of the environmental ones. So the risk doesn't really show up in practice. The last component of patient agent is that it has this opponent modeling attribution to it. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to figure out like how best to respond to their opponents. So I tried to do a best response to adaptive and learning agent, but it's really hard to learn their aspirational parameters and see how they're going to change their price next, just because there's so much going on in the world that you don't know about. So when the price changes from one round to the next, you don't really know if the price changes because another negotiation thread was successful, or if it's just due to the aspirational parameters. So if you see like an offer of 316 on one step and then 314 on the next, it's really hard to see where that change of 2 is coming from. So it doesn't try to do any modeling of adaptive or learning agents. However, it does do some opponent modeling for the built-in environmental agents. The only one that was ready to go for the deadline was its model against single agreement agents. So it just has a little bit of detection to try to determine if it's trading with a single agreement agent. And if it does, what it tries to do is it tries to give single agreement agent a quantity of 1 and an offer of a high price, just to get rid of the demand that single agreement agent has from the game, and prevent our opponents on the same level from being able to fulfill that contract for a better price and more demand. So it hurts itself a little bit to just take out that quantity from the game. So some things in the future that I'd like to implement is that if other agents are sync agents, sometimes patient agent doesn't handle the offers during the last round correctly. So it sometimes takes offers that aren't final offers as final offers, just because it's not super robust to other people using weights. So getting that fixed would be something to improve. And I'd also like to put in the other 2 environmental agents into the opponent detection and best responding to them to see if that gives further advances in performance. We'll just go over one little graph of results. So this is for one particular simulation. I think it was like 1,500 games or so. And you can see here that patient agent outperforms adaptive agent and learning agent, and also gentle and agent 1, which, like I mentioned earlier, are the best performing agents from the one-shot competition last year. However, there were some parameter changes this year, so you'll see both of them do significantly worse than just base adaptive and learning agent, and that's just due to the parameters changing this year and making their strategies less effective. I'd like to thank Professor Amy Greenwald at Brown for being the primary person I worked on with this, for our discussions and ideas. And I'd also like to thank Yasser Mohammed for running the competition, always willing to answer questions, provide bug fixes, and fix issues as they showed up. If anyone would like to have any questions or further discussion, you can reach out to me at the email listed on this slide. And here's the reference for the patient look-ahead agent and concurrent negotiations. Thank you all so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of the conference.